Next Level.
20 years, 20th anniversary of the Sega Dreamcast. Boy, does time fly. Next Level Taken here, and I'm talking to you about why the Dreamcast is so special to me 20 years later.
Appreciate what you got, Junior. Hey, let me go.
I think Ojimbo got hold of a bad taco.
Hey, I'm a legend.
NFL 2K on Sega Dreamcast. It's
Even though I had a PlayStation 1, and it is the 24th anniversary of the PlayStation in North America, I'm here to talk about the little system that could. The system that was so far advanced for its time. The incredible 3D graphics, the incredible worlds, the incredible gameplay, all the different genres of games. These games were just fun and exciting to play. And the Dreamcast, I remember playing the kiosk unit at Toys R Us and playing Sonic Adventure months before it came out back in the summer. And also then a few months later demoing NFL 2K and playing for the first time Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, even though that came out on PS1, but the graphics were much better on the Dreamcast, and that goes for all the games that came out on PS1 and Dreamcast at the same time, such as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Anything that came out on PS1 just looked a heck of a lot better on the Dreamcast. Games like Marvel vs. Capcom, whereas you couldn't play them properly on the PlayStation 1 because it just didn't have enough RAM. You could play it. The definitive version was on the Dreamcast. There was a 90-second commercial for the Sega Dreamcast on MTV. This was unheard of back in the day. The hype for this machine was unheard of. It was real. The first day of sales were through the roof. This thing broke records at the time, and it looked to have a bright future. Obviously, it didn't end well, and I'm not going to dwell on that too much because we all know what happened with the Dreamcast, and we can all speculate on certain things. Certain things are facts, others are speculation about what happened with the company and why they went multi-party. 99.99 was a huge, momentous occasion. Soul Calibur came to homes, and not only was it arcade perfect, it was better than arcade perfect. It looked better than the arcade. That was unheard of at the time. It had extra features. It was the definitive version, but you could play it at home. Dreamcast had 4 controller ports on the front, unlike the PlayStation where you had to go buy a multi-tap. And even though we didn't have EA, Electronic Arts, on board, unfortunately, 2K Sports did enough. Sega did enough with NBA and NFL 2K franchise. NBA is still around to this day and age. Shenmue kicking down doors. I can remember picking that up November the 7th, 2000. The Dreamcast was the first console that I actually bought with my own money, where my parents didn't buy this. And at the time, I can remember struggling a bit because the job I had wasn't the greatest job in the world. I was making minimum wage, and I had gotten a PS1, but I had gotten it a couple of years later after it came out. But Dreamcast was the one that I was hyped for, that I saved up my money for. It was cheap. It was only $200. The PlayStation 1 was, I think, $300 when it came out. So not only did you have 4 controller ports, you also had a 56K modem on board. There was a broadband adapter later on. You had optional microphone things. You had VMUs, visual memory units. You could plug in your little memory card into the controller, and you could see a screen. And on Resident Evil, it would show your heartbeat, so you wouldn't have to go to a menu screen. On things like NFL 2K, you could hide your plays, so the other player, if you're playing co-op, they can't see what your player you're calling. This thing was well ahead of its time. There hasn't been anything since this. The VMU, you could take little mini games on the go with you. You could watch flash-based movies. It wasn't the most advanced thing in the world, but this was incredible for its day and age. This system, the Dreamcast, had some of the best fighting games on the market. You had Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves. You had Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Again, arcade perfect. These games were amazing. You had Project Justice, the sequel to Rival Schools, which, when the heck are they going to make a new one of those? I've been waiting for a long, long time for that. But I digress. Rayman 2 comes to mind. That was a great platform. That was the first time I had played Rayman game, and I loved it. I fell in love with the series, and I've been playing it ever since. The Amazing Shooters, the shoot 'em ups on this game, on this system. Giga Wing 1 and 2, Mars Matrix, and this thing, Ikaruga. This system was on fire. All of the creative juices, creative flows, the games, Crazy Taxi 1 and 2, arcade perfect Crazy Taxi. Well, maybe the frame rate a little bit, but close to arcade perfect Crazy Taxi. That was the second best selling game on the system, which is amazing when you think about it. But that just running around, driving people around to real world locations like KFC and Pizza Hut, the now defunct Tower Records, and with along to the soundtrack of Offspring, Bad Religion. That game is badass then, it's badass now. Grand Theft Auto 2 was on this system. Grandia 2, another RPG hit. Guilty Gear X, which is another fantastic fighting game. House of the Dead 2 for your shooters. Hydro Thunder, which was amazing in the arcade, and I still find Hydro Thunder to be fun to this day. Let's see, what else was on the Dreamcast? JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So many just amazing games. Sword of the Berserk, which I love the version that's on the PS4, but I also love the Dreamcast version of Sword of the Berserk. And if you've never seen that anime, it's fantastic. You gotta go check that out. It's an old school anime. But the Dreamcast was the first system that I plunked my own money into, so maybe that's why I feel so special about it. But it was also ahead of its time to get online. I used to whoop ass in NBA and NFL 2K online. Quake. You didn't need a PC to play Quake. I could play against PC players. This was cross-play well before Fortnite came out. Well before they were pushing that in this era. This thing was insane. You had all the arcade hits. You had compilations like Midway's Greatest Hits Volume 1. You had an Atari anthology on this thing. So you had old school stuff. You had Metropolis Street Racer, which is the precursor to Project Gotham Racing. I don't know what's happened with that series as well, but that was a fantastic racing title from Bizarre Creations and Sega. You had Monaco Grand Prix. Mortal Kombat Gold was a launch title. Mr. Driller, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. You had tons of games and tons of different genres. This thing was fun. You had Choo Choo Rocket, which was online before the online was in place. You could play it online via email. It was still fun as heck. A fantastic little puzzle game. Resident Evil Code Veronica. I bought a Dreamcast for Resident Evil Code Veronica. I bought a GameCube later on for Resident Evil 4. Code Veronica continued the story of Claire Redfield from Resident Evil 2 and Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 1. Code Veronica did not have pre-rendered graphics. It had real-time graphics now, and boy did it look fantastic at the time for its age. It may not have aged so well these days, but it was a beauty back in the day. It was incredible. I can overlook things like Steve. Hey, Claire. Yeah, I can overlook that. Besides Steve, the game was a masterpiece. 10 out of 10. The Dreamcast was rich in every genre. The fighting games were fantastic. The racing games were on point. You had the definitive version of Daytona on there, which I had. Like, of the top 10 selling games on the Dreamcast, I had 8 of those games. You had games that no other system would try. And still, the creativity that the Dreamcast had, those games, you still don't find in this day and age now. Even though indie games have taken over a bit, where the creativity's been left off in the AAA titles. You had Virtua Fighter 3, that was in the top 10 selling game. Seaman, which is really a different experience. You get on the microphone and this thing would be giving birth. This was narrated by Leonard Nimoy. This was incredible for its time and age. Less of a game and more, say, of an experience, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. I remember buying it $60 at launch, and I felt like I got my money's worth out of it, even though there's very little gameplay involved with that title. Crazy Taxi, and just the memories I have of that. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. It sucks that Sonic Adventure 2 was around the time when the Dreamcast was fading, and at that point in time when Crazy Taxi 2 had come out, they had an NBA 2K2 that they were already porting those titles to other systems. But again, I don't want to focus too much on the negative. I want to focus on the positive, and just playing online against people from all across the world, getting on. It had web browser, you can get online. They had chat rooms. You could look up information, gameplay videos, highlights, tips and tricks, all with the Dreamcast. You didn't need a computer. You could all do that from one system. I remember getting free internet in New York, which was incredible, and was speedy too. But just, it was amazing time to be a gamer. I remember tying up the phone to where if anybody tried to call me half the time you get a busy signal because I'm online, I'm on the Dreamcast, and I'm making it so back then you could get booted offline if somebody called, but I was like, no, I set my settings to where you would just get a busy signal. I would not be booted off. I wanted to continue playing NBA Online or NFL Online. Even games like Jet Set Radio had features where you could take and you could download pictures off the internet and use that as your spray, as that as your graffiti. Shenmue 2, which never got ported over here, they had a PAL version. Soul Calibur, I remember just fighting friends in Soul Calibur, staying up all night doing that. Phantasy Star Online was a big deal. MMO, I mean, this thing was well ahead of its time. And it was cheap, it was affordable. The controllers, again, the VMU unit, you had the Rumble Pack. They were a little bulky, but it felt fine. You know, it's a shame it didn't have 2 analog sticks, it just had 1. But everything felt good. The triggers felt perfect. I love the Dreamcast controller. I have nothing bad to say about the Sega Dreamcast controller. And $9,999 is also the day that Final Fantasy VIII came out. And I remember playing that as well and buying that. I don't think I pre-ordered it, but I remember picking that up at the store. So I was a PlayStation fan too. I was playing Tron Bond at the same time I was playing Marvel vs. Capcom. And I'd go to the game store and I would pick up games for both. And this is how I am now with my Xbox One and my PS4. But Sega Dreamcast, just so many good memories, so many unique titles. You know, Peter Moore gets blamed for a lot, but you know, they had a good run of almost 2 years where the Dreamcast was on fire. This was prior to PS2, and maybe had they gone with DVDs, maybe it'd be a different story right now. Maybe if they didn't have so much debt from the failures of the Sega CD and the 32X and the Saturn debacle. But the Dreamcast was fantastic for its time. The people that own a Dreamcast know how good it is, how good it was, and have nothing but good things, nothing but positive things to say about it. There's more good games on this system than bad titles, which is, you know, name another system that can do that. The only other systems that invoke this kind of good memory and feel good warmth out of me are maybe my PlayStation Vita, which is another failure, and the PSP, which went on to go sell 80 million units, which is not bad, especially against the Game Boy, the DS. But the Dreamcast, the library, I mean, you can hold this library to this day and age against other libraries, and the PS4 is now starting to come into its own, where it also has a fantastic library. I mean, I love my PlayStation 4, I love my Xbox One, but the Dreamcast, just warm, fuzzy memories, I guess nostalgic memories of playing the Sega Dreamcast. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm just like gushing here. I can remember picking up Tony Hawk for buying it in NY and just playing that thing non-stop. And you know, I would be late for work sometimes because I would stay up playing the Sega Dreamcast. I would not want to get up in the morning and go to work because I was like, I'm tired because I've been playing Dreamcast all day and night. $9,999 was a huge day. Just playing people on Quake online, Unreal. This thing could do no wrong. I love it. I loved my Dreamcast. I love the library that it had, the controllers. I wanted a black Sega Sports system. I never got it. Maybe one day I'll get that. But the Sega Dreamcast has so many unique titles. A lot of them have been ported over to other systems, thank God, by this point in time. But there's so many still that are exclusive to the Dreamcast that never got ported anywhere else. Even unique titles, like Sega could take anything, like truck driving, like the most monotonous things, and make it fun. 18-wheeler was an incredible experience. They had a wealth of arcade titles that they borrowed from, that they brought over, that they ported over. You know, Virtua Fighter, 3TB. It's just, I can't say enough great things about the Sega Dreamcast. And I mean, although I love my PlayStation 1, I don't feel the same way about my PS1 as I do the Sega Dreamcast. And I don't know if I feel that way about any other system since then. Maybe the Vita comes sort of close or the PSP, but and maybe the PS4 and Xbox One to some degree. But I'm not nostalgic over those yet because I still have them. I still play them regularly every day. Sega Dreamcast was just so embedded in my brain. It was such a poster child for the 90s and early 2000s. You know, just getting online. The online was pretty smooth for that time. I mean, I argue that some of the latency there was better than some of the games I play now today, in this day and age. The servers of 2K are not holding up all the time like they did back then. So this has just been a little retrospect, a personal look at the Sega Dreamcast, the memories that I have. I hold this system deep and dear to my heart. I love Sega. You know, I'm glad they're still around, even though they're making games for other companies. I did go on to later buy an Xbox and a GameCube and a PS2, and I love all those systems as well. Not quite as much as I love the Dreamcast. I should say it's interesting that Windows was in the Sega Dreamcast because it's almost as if Microsoft was testing the waters for their upcoming Xbox console. And here's 18-wheeler that I was talking about. But yeah, they would take just the strangest concepts and make it a game, and it wouldn't work in another era on another system, but it worked on the Dreamcast. So well ahead of its time. Sega Dreamcast, 20 years old. I'm getting old. That's the only thing that means. When the PlayStation 1 is 24 and the Dreamcast is 20, and I remember this like it was yesterday, that means I'm getting old, but I'll be playing games until the day I die. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you're a Sega fan, if you've played the Dreamcast, if you never got to play the Dreamcast. And again, I didn't focus too much on the negative of why they went out of business and, you know, the piracy that went down. Most people know about the history anyway. I'm just coming from a personal standpoint, a nostalgic view of what the Dreamcast was to me back then, back in 99, 2000, 2001. Sega, 20 years old, happy birthday, happy anniversary. There's a clip here of Peter Moore coming up where he discusses the Dreamcast. Don't throw him to the fire so much because, you know, he was doing his job, and honestly, you know, maybe they could have put up a little bit more of a fight, but maybe Sega goes under completely too. They could have, you know, totally went bankrupt. So I'm just glad that didn't happen. I do thank you for watching. Remember to listen for Peter's comments and leave a like, share, all the good stuff. It's been Next Level Taken. I know rambled on here and there. I apologize
Welcome
for that.
to the laboratory.
I'm not editing this either. I'm just letting it fly. It's the 20th anniversary. I want to get this video up today, not tomorrow. 9/9/99. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy.
It's nice to see you on a weekend night for a change.
Ready to Rumble, Trick Style, Soul Calibur, Crazy Taxi, and then maybe C-Man. I think what we did is this great little device kicked off what is now a $140 billion industry, which is primarily based on being connected and online. And this baby was the first non-computer that could access the internet. You need a title when you're launching a console that when you look at it, you go, oh my God, that is so, I can't do that. My current console can't do that. I've never seen anything like that. Because everybody knows Sonic, everybody knows the game, and they have in their mind what he looks like and what that game looked like, which previously was, you know, the Genesis would be 2D-ish, but all of a sudden this thing explodes. And of course the way that the game is rendered, it's always bright, vibrant colors. But when speed is the key, and then you're always used to talk speed, and in those days in hardware, what better icon and what better game to push it out there as this is what you want and this is why you need to buy this Dreamcast.